All right, let's see how this is going. ZenGlop the Podcast. Music, poetry, psychogeography. Trying something new today. For those of you who usually listen through the podcast stream, whatever application that you're using, I'm trying something new where I have a video of each podcast. Not quite a live stream, right? I do not have enough community members on YouTube to be allowed to do an actual live stream. We're going to change that soon, right? But I can sort of set up my laptop and do a quick QuickTime movie and then drop that on YouTube. And I'm doing that because I used to do it, actually. I used to put the sound recording of the podcast up on YouTube just as a different audience. There's an overlap between my podcast listeners and my YouTube channel, but it's not a one-to-one relationship. So if you're catching this on the YouTube channel for the first time, welcome. Subscribe in the podcast link. Go to my website, ZenGlop.net. You find all kinds of stuff there, including a backlog of previous podcast episodes. And introduce yourself to each other, podcast listeners and YouTubers. Say hello. I mean, I don't know who I'm kidding. You're the same 6 people. But thank you for checking it out. Anyway, we'll see how this works. I did this once before already this morning, I will confess, and I screwed up the sound. There wasn't any sound. It was a nice video. I mean, but there was no sound. So we'll see how this works. All right, so today I'm thinking about music. And particularly, I'm thinking about Mahler's Third Symphony. And I'm thinking about my reaction to that piece. And what is it to have a reaction to a piece of music? And the thought that came to mind was the metaphor of distillation. And so distillation is like alchemy, right? Fermentation is magic. You take a mash, throw it all together, add some sugar, some yeast, and it ferments, produces alcohol. Beer, sake, fermented things are wonderful. Kimchi isn't alcoholic, but it's fermented. Fermentation is a wonderful thing, but then you can take that, you can apply heat to it, and the alcohol, along with residual characteristics of the original substance, sort of evaporates off, and then through the magic of the still, the crucible, it cools and it precipitates out into this new liquid that is a distillate, a precipitate of the original. So where am I going with this? Well, my initial thinking or reaction was the piece of music is a distillation of my emotions. It's a distillation of the emotions of the listener. Regardless of who the listener is and what the music is, right? I'm using the example of myself and Mahler's Third Symphony, but the same holds true with, if I recall what's on my playlist, I have a bunch of craft work that comes up during the day. My shower music, if you want to have that image in mind, is typically a mix of the Bee Gees. What I'm trying to get across is the specifics aren't important. It's the relationship, right? So I start by thinking, well, the Mahler's Third is the distillation of the physiological, mental, emotional sensations that I have reduced to its essence. And that is why that piece is so meaningful to me, because it resonates with a concentrated form of the experience that I'm having, or triggers a particular reaction. The dynamic of music to listener is multifaceted, but it's ultimately caused by a trigger of a distillate. But then I was thinking more then about this metaphor. Like, does that really hold true? Like, in that case, what is the still? If the music is the output, and I'm the if the music is the output, am I the mash? Well, what's the still? Is the still the mind of the composer? It could be, but I'm not sure that really holds up. What if the music itself is the still? In that metaphor, I am definitely the mash. I am the fermented material that is going to be heated, evaporated, and precipitated, and emerge at the end of the piece of music with a more concentrated version of what I started with. So in that model, the leap is in the first engagement with the music. It is saying that I am putting myself into the music. And that's really interesting to me, because that lines up with sort of the dynamic imagination. Like it in order to make that metaphor work, there has to be this sort of step beyond the immediate physiological constraints of the human, whether it's the human body, whether it's the emotional reactions of the human, whether it's the mental phenomena associated with being human, to become the fermentable mash in the still. I have to kind of set that aside, right? We have to say that is the starting point, but that there is an experience beyond that. Does the piece of music compel that? It can, I think. I think that there is some music, either through the immediate attributes of the music, or because of extra musical associations that have been provided for the music, or because of the framework around the music that we have applied because we've heard the piece before. We bring our own expectations, our own fantasies, our own memories, our recollections of the past, provide the springboard that gets us into that dynamic imagination, that puts us into the still. It's active listening. It's not putting music on and filling space with it. It is dancing. It is singing along or as part of. It is performing. It is playing in the listening of the piece. We are creating the piece, and we are being changed by it, so that at the end of it, we have something different than what we started with. We still have what we started with. My body has not evaporated when I listen to Mahler's Third, even if that's what it feels like sometimes. My head has not been sliced open by laser beams when I listen to Kraftwerk, even though that is definitely what it feels like. Those experiences occur within the dynamic imagination, within the active listening. And so they're valid experiences that we bring with us and then carry with us through the next time that we engage with that piece of music. So is that what aesthetics is? Maybe that's where I would like to use the word aesthetics, not as a subset of philosophy, which I think is how I was exposed to aesthetics as a student. Was taught by the philosophy department and taught as a way of thinking, and a way of defining. But what if this may be a bit solipsistic, but what if the aesthetics is that which compels the aesthetic experience, and where aesthetics and the aesthetic experience is this undeniable exposure to the dynamic imagination. And that dynamic imagination looks like a still. While I'm talking, the only thing that comes to mind is the set of the TV show MASH, where Hawkeye and his various roommates have a still set up, that they produce their own, I guess, grain alcohol, whatever they're producing. I've never distilled anything. I do see that it's now possible to purchase home stills that are very solidly made, and you can't really screw it up, right? I sort of have this fear of everything blowing up, but I think you can buy these home stills that will allow you to experiment with many different fermentable sources. So maybe I'll give that a shot someday. Not sure. Unlikely. I do like to drink my distilled spirits, but I don't really have much interest in producing them. So, all right, let's see if this worked. I'm going to try and put this up both to the podcast and to the to the YouTube. Let me know what you think. If you think these videos are worth doing, I'm going to try it for a few weeks and see how it comes together. Excuse me. So keep your wits about you, and I'll check you in tomorrow.